Okay, we're continuing here in the Equal Rights chapter. We're going to begin with slide number 24, the PowerPoint. So another case that dealt with affirmative action, and again, took an interesting, or actually added, what's the word I want to say? They added a more nuanced understanding of affirmative action. That's probably the best way of saying it, is a case called Adirond versus Pena in 1995, okay? So the court in this particular case overturned an earlier ruling that upheld a federal policy that set aside a certain percentage of federally funded construction projects for minority firms, okay? But here's the kicker. Importantly, the court said past discrimination in a particular industry does not justify, okay, granting an advantage to a minority-owned construction firm that have not been the direct victims of discrimination. Okay, so in other words, you can't go back and try to rectify something in the past, okay? Just deal with the present, okay? In other words, no long-term reparations for past injustices in the past. Deal with the present, okay? Because again, that can get real prickly, and where does that end? And where does it begin? And all those types of things. So the court weighed in there on that particular issue, okay? Let's see. Okay, two other cases. Go to slide number 25. These are interesting, okay? Gratz versus Bollinger and Grutter versus Bollinger, same year, 2003, same institution, University of Michigan, okay? And both dealt with affirmative action. What do you do, okay? Same issue, same school, two different decisions by the courts, two totally opposite decisions. In Gratz versus Bollinger, the courts struck down Michigan's undergraduate admission policy, which granted 20 points to minority applicants. In other words, you can't give minority applicants an extra 20 points if you're going to go to the undergraduate schools of the University of Michigan, because that is violative of the principle of affirmative action. In other words, that unfairly discriminates against non-minorities. In the case of Grutter versus Bollinger, which dealt with going to the law school, okay, the court said that essentially University of Michigan could give minority students a boost up and perhaps discriminate against non-minority students or prevent non-minority students from getting in, okay? So the court upheld Michigan's law school admission policy, which took race into account in admissions. The court held that it fosters Michigan's compelling interest in obtaining the educational benefits that flow from a diverse student body, okay? Which, again, the logic is interesting because wouldn't you want a diverse student body in the undergrad school? But you would, and wouldn't you want the same in the grad school, in the law school? Again, it's interesting because it was the same issue, but the court came on different sides, and they thought that in graduate schools you must foster diversity more than in the undergraduate schools. Okay, very interesting. In other words, if you can figure out the total rationale, the logic on these two totally incompatible conclusions, please let me know. Okay, because you're kind of in some deep weeds here. Okay, controversial, obviously. Okay, again, both cases together are controversial because of the inconsistent logic. And this is part of the challenge of punting to the courts on some of these issues, some of these social issues, and not allowing legislators in Congress to hash it out. Because again, why would Congress be a better source of this? Because they can talk together, right? There's debate. If you're going to pass a law, you're going to have to basically argue it through in the 435 members of the House and then in the 100 members of the Senate and get an equal bill passed between both that you're going to go to the president. So what that means is that reflects a lot more consensus, right? Agreement of the American people, because again, all of these congressmen represent the American people than the courts, which is 9 individuals. I'm sorry, 9 individuals on a Supreme Court is not representative of 330 million people. okay? They are from an elite class to begin with, most of whom are from the East Coast and are graduated from Ivy League schools, okay? So anyway, it's interesting. I really enjoy Antonin Scalia, if for no other reason than he is humorous. And his humorous response to the decision in the Grutter versus Bollinger case, okay, is, again, it's worthy of being read. So let me just read it here. So if you go to the next slide, which we've got slide number 26, he said this: the educational benefit that the University of Michigan seeks to achieve by racial discrimination consists, according to the court, of cross-racial understanding and better preparation of students for an increasingly diverse workforce and society, all of which is necessary not only for work, but also for good citizenship. This is not, of course, an education benefit on which students will be graded on their law school transcript. Works and plays well with others, B+, or tested by the bar examiners. Question: describe in 500 words or less your cross-racial understanding. And then here's the punchline: for it is a lesson of life rather than law. Essentially, the same lesson taught to, or rather learned by, because it cannot be taught in the usual sense, people 3 feet shorter and 20 years younger than the full-grown adults at the University of Michigan Law School in institutions ranging from Boy Scout troops to public school kindergartens. What's he saying? He's saying, listen, we shouldn't have, the federal government should not have to step in and force law schools to racially integrate students so that they can have a cross-racial understanding. Because quite frankly, you kind of need to learn this when you're a little kid, okay? If you're trying to instill this to individuals that are 24, 25 years old, it's a lot harder, okay? I like his logic there. I think it's good, and it's also funny, okay? And so you can just kind of take that for what it is and read that, okay? So let's move on here, okay? Talking about other groups, okay? Clamoring for equal rights in our society, and how do you deal with it, okay? Another hot potato is Hispanic Americans, okay? Is immigration a hot button issue in our country, right? Do many politicians not want to touch it? Yeah, you know, you've got 50 million Hispanics living in the United States. 100 million or so are living here illegally, okay? What do you do with them? Do you grant them citizenship rights or don't you? If you grant them citizenship rights, what does that do to the rights of citizens? Because you've taken illegal immigrants and placed them either at the same level of citizens or even above, because what if they're not paying taxes? Or what if they're not subject to the obligations of U.S. citizenship? What do? Okay, prickly subjects. Okay, remember in one of the first lessons, we talked about how the founders looked at immigration, right? Is that an individual could come into this country as long as 3 criteria were met, right? The principle of equality, okay? In other words, you can't come here as an illegal immigrant and continue to work here and enjoy all the benefits of American citizenship, but not contribute in its responsibilities. You violated equality, you're actually at a higher level than citizen. The second principle was this idea of sovereignty, is that if you come here in this country, okay, you either become a citizen or you leave. Because if you stay here as a non-citizen and continue to enjoy the benefits of American citizens, you're violating sovereignty, you're violating the Constitution, right? This Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and part of that supreme law of the land sets the dictates for how you become a naturalized citizen. And if you choose to ignore it, you're violating the concept of sovereignty. And then finally, remember the principle of character. Are you exhibiting good character if you're here illegally and you choose to stay here illegally and you make no effort to become a citizen? Okay? These are all the issues that both the Congress of the United States and presidents for the last 30 plus years have chosen not to deal with. Okay? President Reagan had a real hard time with this and didn't deal with it well. And all presidents since him have not dealt with it particularly well on both sides of the aisle, because it's a political hot potato, right? Especially if you've got individuals that perhaps could potentially vote for you and you basically don't listen to their cries or send them away, okay? In other words, these are some of these issues, okay? And there have been issues in President Obama's presidency where illegal immigrants were pouring over, in this case, the Arizona border, okay? And the state of Arizona was sending their own state officials to basically prevent, illegal immigrants from coming in. And the Obama administration, its justice system, basically told the state officials to stand down, okay? Because they did not want them to prevent them from coming in or dealing with it, okay? Went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court sided with the president and basically said, and in this respect, it is rightfully so, is that when you're dealing with foreign nations, okay, this is where the federal government has jurisdiction, and so it told Arizona to stand down, okay? Was that very controversial? Absolutely, okay, absolutely. In President Trump's presidency, cases where early in his presidency, he was preventing individuals coming over into the United States from 7 nations in the Middle East that have found to foment terrorism, okay? It went to the courts, and in some cases, the courts struck down what President Trump advocated, okay? Again, this idea of immigration, okay? Again, I'm kind of expanding it beyond Hispanic Americans, but it's something that, quite frankly, Congress is charged to create laws to deal with this. It's the executive branch that's supposed to execute the laws. And so really, the ball should be in Congress's court to create good law with regards to Hispanic Americans, in particular, the illegal immigrants that are here. What do you do with them? Okay, do you give them a pathway to citizenship? Do you deport all of them? Is there a middle ground? What do you do? Okay, these are some of these issues that have to be dealt with. So I'm going to stop there, and we'll continue on.